Mr. Reich, I was so glad to see in this latest video your call to action, as in communicating with our elected officials to tell them what we want. At that phone number you gave, or at congress.gov/members, people need to know who is representing them in Congress, in both houses of Congress, Senate and House. And I say this with respect, that center to left/Democratic voting bloc generally isn't as involved as the right is. And we need to change that if we want to see a change in our democracy, if we want to preserve our democracy. There's a lot of there's a tendency of people in late night talk shows to make fun of Trump supporters. That's their audience they're appealing to. But I say change one word there, say Trump voters, people who voted for Trump. That means in 2024, they participated in their democracy by voting. I can't fault them for that. I thank them for that. Don't understand the choice they made, but they participated in their democracy. Again, it's this center to left Democratic bloc that just, so many people just didn't show up. And then you have all these videos of people crying in their car, how could this happen? How could Trump get reelected? If I cared enough, I would ask them, well, did you vote for Harris in 2024? A lot of people didn't. And a lot of people, again, the center to left, I hear this a lot. They don't want to vote the lesser of two evils. Well, who does? But particularly in a presidential election, one of those two candidates is going to be your next president. And you're going to have to live with that. So you might as well take your best shot at getting, if nothing else, the least harmful candidate. And your encouragement for people to contact their elected officials to tell them what they want to see from them is fantastic. Your videos generally tend to be more academic, where you break down complex socio-political subjects to understandable terms. You don't dumb it down. You don't talk down to your audience. I like that. But your videos have been more of an academic, I'd say more academic in flavor. This one, calling for action, I'm very happy. And sir, I would like to ask you a favor, because you have an audience and I don't. I would like you to take that proactive stance a little further, because we need to vote the Democratic ticket straight down the line in the 2026 midterm. And normally, yes, I wouldn't go along with that, the whole vote blue no matter who thing. But considering that I'm recording this video on the 6th of March, and two resolutions, one in the House and one in the Senate, to enforce the War Powers Act have been voted down almost straight across party lines. In the Senate, SJ Res 104, I think that was March 4th that was voted in. All the nays, in other words, all the votes voting against holding Trump accountable and putting Congress in charge of war powers, all the no votes were cast by Republicans. All of the yes votes were cast by Democrats, independents, and one Republican Senator Paul from Kentucky. And I think it was yesterday in the House, H-Con Res 38, I'm cheating, I'm reading off a sheet here. That was voted down as well. Yeah, March 5th, voted down. 2 Republicans voted yes, 4 Democrats voted no. But there again, pretty much along party lines, in the House, Republicans voted not to hold Trump accountable, not to put Congress back in charge of declaring war. So yes, we the people, particularly us folks over here on the left, need to get in contact with our elected officials and tell them what we want, tell them what we demand of them. But that's not enough. Come November, we've got to put the Democrats in a majority position in both houses of Congress to keep Trump in check. Now, again, we're starting the precedent of being in regular communication with our elected officials. So sure, we vote the Democrats in, and we want to see them keep Trump in check, but we also want to see what they do for us. What legislation are they putting forth to make life better for the American people? And if we show up in huge numbers, they will take note. And when we call them and write them, or call them out on social media for that matter, it will register with them that they need to listen. If we don't, then why should they? Last year, I attended the No Kings protest. I think 7 million people did. So imagine 7 million people show up to protest, and then come the midterm election, 10% of this voting bloc shows up. Both parties will take note of that. They won't take us seriously. If the president declares war without authorization from the Congress, and 10% of this voting bloc shows up, they won't take us seriously. But if all that happens and we start flooding our elected officials, irrespective of party, with communication, letting them know what we want from them, and in November, 95% of this voting bloc shows up, and we put the Democrats in a majority position in both houses of Congress, both parties will take notice. That will also make Trump a lame duck president for the last 2 years of his term. I find that appealing. One, of course, the protection of our democracy, and two, just the blow to his ego. So whatever their motivation is. And sir, the reason I'm asking you to do this, I was a Navy corpsman for 12 years. So, if you're in a car accident and your leg's beamer sticking out of your leg, I'm your guy. But breaking down complex social, political things with the gravitas that you bring to it, I can't do that. I'm not a social media influencer at all because I'm kind of center to left leaning, so the algorithm doesn't reward that. I'm perfectly willing to admit when I'm wrong or state flat out what I don't know. Again, that does not serve the algorithm. But you, sir, with your education and your experience, what you say carries weight. People will listen. The other thing, sir, favor I would like to ask of you and your staff is dealing with things like the SAVE Act, H.R. 72, or the Save America Act, H.R. 7296, or the Make Elections Great Again Act, H.R. 7300. Yes, these are voter suppression bills, plain and simple. Now, I've always had to show an ID to vote, so I don't see a problem with that, but the things they're proposing, like, if you're married and you changed your last name and your birth certificate doesn't match your ID, things like that. Yes, these measures should be stricken down. But let's say they're not. What I'm asking of you, sir, and your staff is take a look at these and come up with a plan. Put out a series of videos saying, this is what you'll need to do to preserve your right to vote should this or that act pass. Because what would be lovely is if, say they passed the most restrictive, which I think is the Make the Elections Great Again one, if everyone showed up with all the documents they need to vote anyway and just walked on into the booth and cast their vote. Imagine in the Second World War when we were negotiating with Hitler and didn't know what he was going to do. Imagine if we got a hold of their playbook, the whole thing, while I think it was Neville Chamberlain was still negotiating with Hitler. But behind the scenes, we've got their whole playbook. We know what they're planning for the next 3 or 4 years. And we can deploy all of our troops and resources and shut them down. If we had that intel, we could have stopped the war in Europe before it started. Well, in this case, we have the intel on what people are trying to do to suppress the vote. And it's not just aimed at Democrats. This doesn't have a bias toward any party. This just is voter suppression. So we can complain about it, or we can develop a plan of action and recommendations so that people can show up and vote and participate in a democracy. So I ask you, sir, please, with your staff, put together a survival guide for these SAVE acts, these voting acts. And I appreciate your time and listening to some grumpy old man with a camera and an an opinion. I appreciate that, and I hope to see more of this kind of proactive, action-oriented content from you in the future. Thank you. One last thing. If you've stumbled onto this video and don't know what I'm talking about, I've included a link to Mr. Reich's video in the description below. I also highly recommend that you go to his channel and subscribe. You won't be sorry. He presents complex social, political issues in an understandable manner, but most of all, without the spin that you get on so much of social media. Pretty well-centered, pretty straightforward and honest. Kind of a rare commodity on YouTube. Check him out. Thank you.